Marvelous hello, friends and loved ones! How are you today? So, look, we all love a good Megami Tensei game, right? Demi-Kids, Persona, But there is one game I will always have a special fondness for, and that is Raidou Kuzunoha versus the Soulless Army. In fact, this was the very first Megaton game I ever talked about on this channel. And I remember saying that I would get around to covering the sequel soon. That was 4 years ago. I am so sorry. So before we get started, there are two things I want to get out of the way. One, this video will contain spoilers, not just for this game, but for Soulless Army as well. And two, the name of the game is Devil Summoner 2, Raidou Kuzunoha vs. King Abaddon. Longtime viewers of my channel may know that I've been saying Abaddon for the past 5 years because, let's face it, Abaddon sounds stupid. But that is the right way to pronounce it, so I vow in this video and all future videos, I'll be using the correct pronunciation that I've been intentionally not using for 5 years now. Raidou Kuzunoha vs. King Abaddon was released in Japan in late 2008, and there was even a special edition that came with a complete copy of Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne where Raidou replaced Dante, but we never got that one. Until next year when the HD remaster of Nocturne comes out! Sorry. The game was eventually released stateside in May of 2009 after a brief period where we weren't even sure if we'd be getting it at all. I mean, the first Raidou didn't seem like a massive success compared to Nocturne, Digital Devil Saga, and those other PS2 games that nobody really cares about. Not to mention, the PS3 had already been around for about 3 years at this point, and the flood of great PS2 games was definitely turning into a trickle. But after receiving an email that was basically just this picture, the game was announced, and only sold as this big box set that came with the Raiho plush you've all seen on my couch in most of these videos. Atlus USA did such a limited run of these boxes that each one is individually numbered. For anyone who's curious, mine is 28,247, and if you've got your own box, feel free to share your own number down in the comments. I still have no idea how many they actually did, but I personally haven't seen any above 50,000. As far as the game itself goes, King Abaddon is a major step up from its predecessor. You can summon 2 demons in battle instead of just 1, which opens a lot of new strategy options. Demons don't waste their MP anymore because there is no MP. All skills now pull from a shared mag pool, which can be easily replenished by exploiting enemy weaknesses, which is a really good system. The arenas themselves are a lot bigger, and Raidou no longer moves like he's running ankle deep through syrup, though I am a little sad you can't do this anymore. Fusion is made a lot easier by being able to access the Goma Den from any save point, so you don't have to run back to the town every time, and towns themselves feel a lot better, because now demon encounters only occur in the Dark Realm or other designated areas. So you don't have to smack down an Alp and a zombie every time you just want to run from the detective agency to the shop. King Abaddon even rewards players who have save data from Soulless Army by having a few of Raidou's select demons join up with you for free when you encounter them in the wild, which I think is a really great reward for returning players. Aside from these general quality of life upgrades, there's also so much more to do in this game through the addition of the side quest called Case Files. Some of these just involve handing over an item or demon for a reward, and some are full story events that flesh out certain characters or demons to unlock new fusions and even more case files. There are a couple of these that you have to do, but for the most part, these are totally optional. I also want to mention that Raidou Kuzunoha vs. King Abaddon is probably the most Shin Megami Tensei out of a game that's not actually part of the Shin Megami Tensei series. Throughout the story, you've got multiple questions that can change your alignment between law, neutral, and chaos. See the way my little triangle body's moving? That means I'm lawful. Of course, like previous Megaton games I've covered on this channel, I will be taking the cool kids path of neutrality, even though the neutral path in this game kinda sucks. I'll explain why later. You've also got demon negotiation instead of just button mashing to get new demons, and starting in Chapter 3, you might even encounter the demons you do not want to run into if you're not prepared, the Fiends. But luckily for me, What? It's New Game Plus. There's even this super helpful, unassuming blonde foreign guy.
You're Satan, aren't you?
Actually, we all know that Lucifer and Satan are two completely separate beings, so, like, that joke doesn't even make any sense. Stupid. Yeah, I am not gonna let that become a running gag. Despite being one of the best demons in this game, I genuinely don't like using Lucifer. Because for some weird reason, they decided that whenever he does basically anything, he needs to make these super weird whale noises. Now I know what you're thinking. Golly gee, John, it sounds like King Abaddon is better than Soulless Army in every way. Now let's talk about the story. So the game starts out with our OG Megaten protagonist, with a black cat that follows him everywhere and tells him what to do, Raidou Kuzunoha, back at the training hall for a bit of a refresher course. By the way, this game gets pretty confusing if you name Raidou, because remember that Raidou Kuzunoha is a title. I didn't name him Conan O'Brien this time because for some reason that's just not as funny to me as it was in 2016. But instead I called him Johei Kato. See, Johei is Raidou's name from the spin-off novel Raidou Kuzunoha vs. the Messenger of the Dead, and I gave him the last name Kato because Raidou was based off of Yasunori Kato, the protagonist from the popular Japanese series Teito Monogatari. Nerd! At the end of the training hall, Raidou is greeted by the sexy spider lady demon Jirogumo, who wants to make Raidou her personal companion. Raidou gladly accepts because who wouldn't, and the game is over. A pretty short but believable story that I think has a happy ending for all involved. 8 out of 10. Now let's explore the 30-hour epilogue. Similar to Soulless Army, Raidou is assigned by his bosses, the Yatagarasu, to work at the Narumi Detective Agency, which serves as our base of operations throughout the story. King Abaddon opens up with a woman swinging by the detective agency with a case for us, and this woman is Akane Narita, and she's the daughter of an affluent politician in the capital. Her case seems simple enough, she just wants us to find the guy in this photograph. The first chapter is pretty much just a bunch of legwork where we have to track down this super lucky guy named Tatsumi who cracks wise about our mama. While trying to squeeze information from him, Raidou is attacked by, and I swear I tried to find virtually any other way to say this, redneck ninjas that managed to drain his luck away thanks to these magic insects called luck locusts. Luck actually plays a pretty big role in King Abaddon, not just in the story, but mechanically speaking as well. Way more so than the other games. Rather than just determining item drop rates or how often you get critical hits, I mean, it does do both of those things, battles will occasionally open with a good luck or bad luck roulette that can provide advantages or disadvantages. Also, a little bit too often for my liking, this'll happen. Don't like it? Too bad. After beating up one of the greatest new demons ever made, Binbogami, who tragically has only appeared in this game, Tatsumi ends up getting sucked into the Shadow Realm or something, but we do get our first real clue from him in the form of some wooden shards that he dropped, that Narumi discovers is actually an insect cage that housed those luck-draining insects we dealt with earlier. Fortunately for us, Narumi recognizes the crest on the cage as the mark of the Fukoshi, who are those redneck ninjas we ran into before. And they're from a super-duper remote village out in the countryside called Tsukigata Village. So, Raidou, Narumi, and the best dang reporter in the capital, Tei, all head out there in hopes of getting information. The people of Tsukigata Village all worship a god named Lord Shinado, who's represented by these goofy watermelon-looking masks. The village is ruled by the Tsukigata family, who wear the Fukoshi armor, and are expert assassins who kill their victims using those luck locusts. They suck out a person's luck until they're either killed in an accident or just decide to take their own life. We find out that the man Akane asks us to find is named Don Tsukigata, and he's the son of the village chief, Akajiro. Don stole the luck locusts from his family and unleashed them on the capital while looking for his sister, Akane, Tsukigata.
Dun dun dun!
See, Akane is arranged to be married to a Lord Tento back in Tsukigata Village, but Dawn wants to put a stop to the wedding. So Akane's family hid her in the capital, which is why Dawn stole the Luck Locusts and went to look for her. The reason Akane hired us to find Dawn was in the hopes that we could find him before their father's men, so she could convince him to return home and make things right. Raidou does eventually meet up with Dawn at the Narita household, and I'm either about to ruin this game for you or make it way better. But my headcanon voice for Dawn is basically Luffy's voice from the abridged series One Piece.
God, that was unnecessarily violent!
Come to think of it, I never really mentioned that unlike Digital Devil Saga, the Persona games, and the soon-to-be Nocturne HD remaster, the Raidou titles don't have any voice acting beyond the occasional battle grunts. Supposedly the reason for this was to give them the feeling of a silent film from the 20s, but I don't know if I buy that. Then again, the one time we actually did hear Goto speak in Soul Hackers, he sounded...
Oh, it's right double trouble!
Like that. So at the end of the day, I really don't mind leaving these characters' voices up to my imagination. After Raidou beats him up, Dawn vows he'll put a stop to Akane's wedding once and for all by becoming King Abaddon.
Oh! The title makes sense now.
Okay, so now we know who our villain is, right? The title says Raidou Kuzunoha versus King Abaddon. Dawn is aiming to become King Abaddon, and he did sick an army of magic luck-draining locusts on the capital, which Raidou is sworn to protect. So, Dawn's the bad guy, plain and simple.
But wait!
This is kinda where the alignment choices I mentioned earlier come into play. The alignments feel a lot more personal this time around, as you're not reshaping the world to create a kingdom under God or rebuilding society where only the strong survive. The alignments in this game basically boil down to the ideas of Akane's acceptance versus Dawn's resistance. Raidou himself faces a very similar quandary throughout the story. Do you accept and follow the orders of the Yatagarasu as Raidou, or make your own decisions and do what you personally think is right as Johei, or Dennis, or whatever you named him? The main point of this rant is to set up the fact that Dawn is not just a cut-and-dry black-and-white villain. Sure, it may seem that way, seeing as how he betrayed his family and again unleashed a luck-draining plague on the capital, but why do all this just to stop a marriage? See, the marriage ceremony that Akane is about to go through is actually a sacrifice of sorts. Lord Tento isn't one dude, but instead an underground hive of these deformed humanoids who are known as the Tento Lords, or Old Ones. In exchange for the Luck Locust the Fukoshi use in their assassinations, the family must give up their daughters to the Tento Lords so they can be enslaved and essentially turned into obedient baby makers.
Yeah, it's pretty f***ed up.
See, when the Luck Locusts suck luck, as it were, they return to their nest here in the village to deposit all that luck into a giant crystal known as the Pogitron. Once it's full, Dawn believes that he will become a being known as King Abaddon, putting him in a position of power higher than that of the Tento Lords, effectively ending the control they have over his family and his entire village. If you're wondering where Dawn got this idea, he was told about King Abaddon by the Mushibito, who are a clan of Tento Lords that are way less dickish than their Old One counterparts. And they learned about it from their master and our dear friend, Creepy Blonde Guy, so, you know, I'm sure it's all gonna be fine.
Spoiler warning, it's not gonna be fine.
As Raidou, it's easy to see Dawn, who attacked the capital, as a villain, but at the same time, it's kinda hard to argue with his desire to protect his village and stop his sister from becoming a deformed and abused bride to be bred by this entire race of tunnel dwellers. Of course, what it boils down to is the head of this family of assassins sacrificing their own daughter in exchange for the magical weapons they use for their assassining. I was kinda hoping the neutral path here would boil down to basically telling them to knock that crap off and just become farmers or glassblowers or something. Another group of characters that Raidou will encounter out in Tsukigata Village are Garen Kuzunoha the 17th and his apprentice, Nagi. Garen is tasked by the Yatagarasu with protecting Tsukigata Village the same way Raidou is tasked with protecting the capital. The most notable feature about these two characters is their constant use of the words theory and conjecture. Supposedly in the Japanese version of this game, they're using these words in English, but when the whole game is in English, it just stands out as kind of odd. and on more than one occasion, I'd find myself quoting that bit from The Princess Bride at my television.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
That said, I do really like the localization in this game. Many of the characters have great dialogue, and the use of 1920s slang really helps it stand out from other titles. Plus, I can't ever be mad at the game that gave us this line, which I present to you all completely out of context. It's glorious. Poetry, thy name is Raidou Kuzunoha versus King Abaddon. Also, real quick, I need to talk about this one scene because it's just super weird. So, after Raidou learns the dark secrets of Tsukigata Village, the chief kidnaps Tei in order to get to Raidou. I understand this since Tei came to the village with us and she has been snooping around. She's a journalist, don't you know? But this only happens if you're currently lawful or chaotic. If you're neutral, he instead kidnaps... Yeah, remember him? The Dark Summoner Russian android from the first game? Who hasn't been in this game at all up to this point? He's kidnapped as one of Raidou's closest friends. Now, despite Dawn's interference, the marriage ritual does end up happening, and Akane begins her new life as the underground bride of the Tento Lords. And while I'd love to continue this plot, apparently the game itself does not. Since the marriage ritual happened and Raidou needs something to do, it turns out all the luck that got hoovered out of the capital caused this giant tower to pop up in the middle of the city. So we have to climb that, and then climb down using a different path. There's really not much for me to say about this part of the game. It feels like such a disconnect to the rest of the story. The only thing really worth mentioning is you have a rematch against Binbogami that actually unlocks him for fusion, and then you have a big boss fight against another brand new fiend named Yakubiogami, who is fine, but in my eyes not as cool or memorable personality-wise as Binbogami. Alright, so now we just gotta move this rock back where it belongs, and there. Fixed it. So the next chapter basically opens up with Raidou encountering this new demonic locust called Apollyon.
Apollyon is the Greek name for Abaddon.
Also, I freaking love this thing. It's such a cool and imaginative take on Abaddon, who normally looks like this or this, but since in mythology Abaddon is sometimes referred to as a locust king, this design with the skull, bug, and the crown is just, oh man, I really dig it. I'm kinda sad there aren't any Megaton games where you can actually command one of these things. King Abaddon made it so you could get several of the enemy-exclusive demons from the first game as playable demons, so in theory, a third Raidou game would unlock Apollyon to be playable. In a world where Raidou actually got a third game. The problem with Apollyon is, it's invincible. So what do? How about a series of arbitrary trials in 5 different areas of the Dark Realm, because we need some excuse to have Raidou visit all these different places. Before you can face off against the Great Koryu at the end of these trials, you'll fight a white dragon, a blue dragon, a red dragon, and that one elephant guy I complained about in Solus Army, and I was genuinely baffled by this decision. Did they really think that 3 palette-swapped dragons was just fine, but 4 would have been too much? Also, why didn't they just have us face the 4 demons that would have made perfect sense to fight leading up to Koryu? But after completing all 5 trials, we unlock the seal on what is essentially God Jail, and have to fight Amatsu Mikaboshi, aka that one stupid persona Naoto got in that really terrible book she starred in. After beating him, he gives us a star thing that Victor fuses into a brand new sword for us that thankfully is able to kill the invincible bug. Hey, Apollyon!
Suck my luck!
Now the reason why these Apollyon are coming from this hole that looks like the sky ate too much Taco Bell is because the Pogitron is filled, and Dawn will now take complete control of them as King Abaddon. Except, yeah, remember how I said it's not gonna be fine? It's not fine. The Apollyon do not listen to Dawn, and then they start tracking down and killing anyone who has those Luck Locust cages. And if it weren't bad enough that they're skull-faced murder locust with scorpion tails, they also have magic buzzsaws that come out of their faces, so that's bad. See, it turns out that King Abaddon is not an individual person, but is instead this Apollyon nest that is probably upsetting my viewers with trypophobia. And that's what has been able to come into our world because of Dawn's efforts. A big part of why I like Dawn as a character is because he is genuinely distraught over what's happening. Remember, his goal wasn't to become King Abaddon so he could rule the world or conquer stuff. He just wanted to end the Tento Lord's reign over his village. So he is naturally upset that all this chaos and destruction is pretty much his fault, and he takes full responsibility for it. Also, it's a really good thing we're able to kill the Apollyon now, because we've quickly got to fight another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. But hey, you can't tell me this isn't one of the greatest visuals in all of video games. With the help of Raidou Kuzunoha and Nagi, Raidou learns about a special technique that was developed by Raidou Kuzunoha I, which fixed everything the last time this exact same calamity befell the world. And it's done by unleashing the demon Tao Ti. Yeah, Tao Ti, you know, this thing. So that it can... Okay, hold on, let me check my notes. Eat the sky between the capital and Tsukigata village, pulling the Apollyon nest here so it can come in contact with the fully formed Pogitron so they cancel each other out, because the Pogitron is made of pure hope and Abaddon is made up of humanity's despair, and as we all know, hope knocks out despair. I'm sorry, I thought I was playing Devil Summoner, not Dido Raidou. So, for the final dungeon of the game, Raidou and Dawn enter the Apollyon nest, and it's... okay, it's mainly broken up into 3 different parts. The first is this annoying segment where you have to run around a series of nearly identical looking spheres, and it sort of requires you to have nearly every type of demon at some point, which is good. I like seeing the demons get good field work. The second part is a series of questions that will help cement your final alignment. You actually need to play pretty smart if you want to remain neutral by the end of this, but I was able to get it right in the end. And then the last section, much like the final dungeon in Soulless Army, it's a boss rush. So even if you manage to avoid those fiends up until now, the game really wants to make sure you fight them at least once. But there are also a couple of new and unique bosses that you haven't fought before now. Basically, all of these bosses are being summoned by the despair of characters you've met throughout the story. And one of these scenes in particular is really weird. If you've done all of Tei's case files, she, kinda comes on to you. And look, don't get me wrong, Tei is bae, but it feels so out of place and gratuitous to be in the final dungeon, and then cut to a hot spring scene and... oh man, this is the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life. This is, better than 1,000 pornographies. There's also a really nice callback to the first game where Narumi asks Raidou what his dream is, and I think I can safely say what Raidou desires more than anything else. Now sadly, there is one final obstacle that must be overcome before we can face Lord Shinado. Oh yeah, Lord Shinado is our final boss. You know, that goofy watermelon mask guy who kept showing up in Raidou's visions. I didn't really mention those up until now because I just cannot take this dude seriously in that dumb mask. He may as well have an emoji on his face. Because I'm on the neutral path, Akane sacrifices herself to dispel a barrier keeping us out. She puts all her faith in Raidou, but then I guess someone at Atlas must have been reading my dream journal because Giant Akane! Once that's taken care of, we can fight Shinado, who has given himself the title of King Abaddon, for no other conceivable reason than we still needed the name of this game to make any sense at all. Shinado appears as this giant eyeball thing, cause Atlas was kinda going through a giant eyeball phase around this time. And look, I just don't like Shinado as a final showdown. The fight itself is super boring, with his main attack being a mild inconvenience than anything to actually worry about. And his entire motivation is as cliche as it gets. He's literally just one of those gods who spouts the whole, "You must not give mankind hope for the future. Mankind's salvation can only come from the destruction that I will bring them" garbage. It's just boring. Remember when Soulless Army's final boss was a soulless god battleship that transformed into a giant robot and then got possessed by the vengeful spirit of Raidou Kuzunoha the 40th in an attempt to alter the timeline? Yeah, compared to that, Lord Eyeball McPlatitude just doesn't cut the mustard. So, whatever, Raidou wins, and basically everyone's fine except for Akane, because she's still dead. If you take the lawful path, then Dawn ends up dying instead of her, and now I can finally get to what I was saying earlier about the neutral ending kind of being completely terrible. See, it's basically identical to the Chaos ending. Like, except for maybe 1 or 2 lines of different dialogue, the endings are almost exactly the same. Except when you do a Chaos run, you at least unlock some cool goodies in New Game Plus. There are several moments in King Abaddon where the neutral and chaotic paths are identical. Again, except for maybe a small dialogue change, but the law route is quite different. I don't even fully understand why neutral is so similar to chaos in this game to begin with. If the ideas behind law and chaos in King Abaddon are essentially acceptance versus resistance, shouldn't the results of neutral actually be closer to law? You might not like it, but you're not doing anything to fight it, so it still happens, whether you accept it or not. I think the neutral path could have been a really well-told story of Raidou's reluctance to take action one way or the other. The story of a good man doing nothing, but it's just a slightly weaker version of the Chaos path without any of the cool rewards you get for going full Chaos. I love neutral in Megami Tensei games, but I just can't recommend it for a first playthrough of this game. Trust me when I say it's better to play chaotic on your first run. And yeah, that's Raidou Kuzunoha vs King Abaddon. Gameplay-wise, it improves upon literally everything from Soulless Army. I struggle to think of anything this game did that's actually worse, but the story, except for a couple of key moments here and there, I just think it's quite a bit weaker. Dawn is great, and I love some of the new demons brought in, like Binbogami and Apollyon, but they also remind me of those weirdly long chunks in the middle that just felt like stretched out padding. The game is definitely still good, and I highly recommend playing it for yourselves, but I think part of me will just always prefer Soulless Army, and I'm aware that might just be the nostalgia talking.
And now there's really not much else to do except wait for Devil Summoner 3, Raidou Kuzunoha versus the avalanche of Persona 5 spin-offs. I am being informed that Atlus just announced Persona 5 Bake Off.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, be sure to click like, but if you really liked it, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Extra special thanks to all my friends and loved ones over on Patreon, which you can pledge to today to see your own name in these ending credits. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care.